Madam Trendafilova, thank you for talking to KOSEF. I would like to ask you, can you share the update, current situation with the specialized chambers? Where are we standing now? What is going on?
Thank you very much for the invitation, Madam Lazarevich. It is my pleasure to provide update about the Kosovo Specialist Chambers, in particular, of course, the cases that are before the different panels. We have currently 4 cases with 8 accused. On the 18th of May, there was the first milestone related to our judicial activity when trial panel 2, in the case of the specialist prosecutor against Mr. Gutsati and Mr. Haradinaj, they issued the first judgment whereby the 2 have been convicted of crimes. Now the case is before the appeals panel. Of course, bearing in mind the extreme intensive work that is conducted by the judges of the specialist chambers, it is my expectation that maybe we're going to have a final judgment
Mr. Gutsati's case and
Mr. Gutsati and Mr. Haradinaj, maybe the end of the year or the early months of next year. This is the first case. Then last week, the judges of trial panel 1, the case against Mr. Mustafa, the specialist prosecutor, was closed with the final statements by the parties, and now judges are hardly working on the judgment. No one knows, of course, what will be the outcome of this case. But bearing in mind that in the rules of procedure and evidence, which is the equivalent of a criminal procedure code in the domestic system, we, the judges, very ambitiously set up a deadline for the delivery of the judgment, 3 months, with, of course, a possibility of some extension, but always explanations have to be properly provided in a public decision. It is also to be expected, again by the end of the year or very early next year, the trial panel is going to take a decision to issue its judgment. Then tomorrow, the case of the prosecutor against Mr. Shala will be transferred to the same trial panel 1. So for a certain period of time, the judges are going simultaneously to deal with the 2 cases. And the last, the biggest case against 4 accused with 4 counts of war crimes, 6 counts of crimes against humanity, with a lot of evidence, a lot of witnesses, most likely, but this is just an expectation. I don't have any information. This is just the decision of the pretrial judge. Maybe by the end of the year, and again latest the beginning of next year, this case is going to be sent to trial. So that is where we stand, and I have to say that I'm very proud of the work that has been conducted within a very short period of time, because we shouldn't forget that chambers we have been seized somewhere in 2020, and the actual cases became public with the arrest of the accused, where this was around November for 7 of them of 2020, and May of Mr. Shala, who was arrested in Belgium.
You mentioned these several cases, and you also very rightly pointed out that the biggest case against Hashim Thaçi and others. Can you be a bit more specific in terms of how realistic is to have the trial of this case to start, if not by the end of this year, but early next year?
Well, of course, as I emphasized, this is a very voluminous case, and it's very difficult. Of course, I'm following when I can afford it, because I have also other duties. Some of the hearings, also the filings. Now, what was very impressive information that was communicated by the defense during the last status conference, which was public, is that the number of pages evidence is approaching 1 million. So this is really a case with also a lot of witnesses. The prosecutor for the moment is considering over 380. The defense has the right to bring as much pieces of evidence and witnesses as will be useful for their case, but bearing in mind the advanced development in the pretrial proceedings, that also the pretrial judge and the appeals panel have handled all motions related to jurisdiction admissibility defects in the indictment. It is my professional assessment that it could
go early next year.
Yes, even who knows, maybe the end of this year, but this is pure speculation on my part.
What is the biggest obstacle, not in this case, because it's very voluminous case, but also in other cases as well? Or to put in another word, is there any bigger obstacle than intimidation against witnesses or pressure against witnesses, having in mind what happened in fall 2020 with the Haradinaj Guzzati case, starting from the leakage of the documents, thousands, hundreds of documents, throughout this process against Thaçi and others, up until this recent warning from the prosecution that, as they say, many important witnesses are either, I quote, scared to testify, or are, I quote, loyal to Hashim Thaçi and others.
Actually, I cannot speak about the Office of the Specialist Prosecutor. What I know is his statements during the hearings, or members of the team of the Specialist Prosecutor working on specific cases, and some interviews. In particular, I recall the interview in Kohaditure, whereby he was saying that he has been himself investigating. Of course, we have always to recall that Mr. Haradinaj and Mr. Guzzati have been convicted for the moment. We don't know what the outcome will be of the appeals judgment, because then we are going to have a final appeal not for any leakage, but for disclosing the names of witnesses, disclosing confidential information in a number of meetings. So, of course, now going back to the start of your question, for the specialist chambers, the protection of witnesses, the safety and security and well-being before they testify, during the testimony providing to different panels, and after, for them and members of their families, is the central concern and the most pivotal task that we are very, very much attentive to. And we have a very, very strong witness protection program. Some of the witnesses has been saying, even during the courtroom sessions when they were testifying, that they have never been treated so well as in the preparation of their testimony by staff members of the registry. Some of them had concerns, and out of all witnesses that appeared in the courtroom to testify. 3 needed to have the support of a psychologist during the testimony. So it is our understanding that no judgment, no matter how legally well-reasoned judgment could be, will be considered an achievement if this would be for the sake, at the sake of safety, security, and well-being of witnesses.
Why then prosecution is talking about scared to testify, loyal to Hashim Thaçi and others?
I don't know. Probably this is because you know that both parties have to present evidence, which could be written statements also, which could be items, and also witnesses who are going to testify live in the courtroom. And now I can just guess in this interview with you that I don't know where he said this, probably during some interviews, some statements. Probably this is his experience in the preparation of his case.
To your knowledge, you guarantee that witnesses are completely safe?
Witnesses who come to testify before the case, before the specialist chambers, have to feel safe and secure, because a number of measures have been introduced. For example, they could testify with distortion of their voice, distortion of face, pseudonyms, reductions, witness protection program, a psychologist, as I said.
Confidentiality between personnel that works within the court?
Of course, that is, everyone has to sign such a confidentiality declaration. Even our interns have to do this.
To stick again a little bit with this protection of witnesses, to get back to this first, let's say, case with Guzzati Haradinaj's case and the leakage of documents, did investigation continue on who was the person that during the daylight delivered that many pages? And did that really compromise, there were lots of assessments that actually compromised the special court at the same time, but also compromised possible witnesses?
Well, I don't know whether this action by this person who, based on this public statement during the interview, as I mentioned before, Kohagitore, the prosecutor stated that he is very, very intensively investigating.
Mm-hmm. Still?
Yes, still. We are different institutions. That's why, first of all, I cannot, and second, I don't want to go into any details related to the prosecutor's performance, operation. This is an operational issue because it is inappropriate. We are judges and we cannot side with the prosecutor, we cannot side with the defense. So let us hope that this intensive investigation that he was referring to will bring some final result, at least information.
There was something in the press from time to time connecting possible source, I'm quoting, possible source from the Serbian special court prosecution, that actually the documents were sent to the seat of the veterans in Pristina. Any basis for such claim?
I even hear this for the first time.
Couple of titles in Kosovo press.
Yes, well, we are following on a daily basis media reports, the Public Information Communication Unit with Angela and Michael Doyle, who are in charge, prepare very kindly for us. Every evening we have, because it is important, we have in media reports. But I didn't come across this information.
Can you share the updated information on the victims? How many people have applied for the victims program, and how many have been confirmed until today. In what position and status they are now, and what concretely the court provides them? And if you have, if you can share something of their ethnicity or...
Yes, well, victims is also an important part of the work of the specialist chambers. Victims are those who suffer direct harm from the crimes allegedly committed that are before the specialist chambers, and they have the right of notification, acknowledgement and reparations. That is what the law enacted by the Kosovo Parliament provides as rights, fundamental rights of victims. Victims, I can give you some numbers. Victims can apply before the pretrial judge, they can apply also before the basic court. The basic court, in the case of of the specialist prosecutor against Mr. Mustafa, has given victims plenty of opportunities to apply. And in this case, we have 8 victims, and all of them are Kosovo Albanians. Then we have in the case of Mr. Chala, there were 2 victims, but today a decision was issued. Even being here, I have been following together with my colleagues decisions that are rendered in order to keep informed. Additional 6
more, altogether
more,
8.
Now 8, but the case will go to trial. No one knows how many will apply. And in the case, the so-called big case, there are for the moment 32. But before coming here, of course, I was preparing in order to provide facts that speak for themselves, that maybe 50 more applications should be assessed by the pretrial judge. Of course, here I have to say that the pretrial judge and the trial panel have been extremely strict assessing the applications, whether those who applied could really have the victim status and participants in the proceedings, and the pretrial judge has not given this status to a number of victims. There was an application to the appeals panel, and the appeals panel confirmed the pretrial judge's decision. These victims were not granted the status because they didn't satisfy the different elements of the definition of a victim. I said that the 8 victims in the Mustafa case are Kosovo Albanians. In the other cases, victims are from different ethnicities. There are Kosovo Albanians, there are, I can't be very specific, Roma, even Egyptians, so the ethnicity is different.
To what extent you are aware of the fear within the Kosovo Serbian community? I'm specifically talking of families of the victims amongst the Kosovo Serbian community. When I say fear that the crimes, ethnic crimes that took place against them, and that within the time frame and other criteria are falling under the mandate of the specialized chambers, will be neglected. Let us mention some of them, especially after June 1999, such as Livadice case, Starogradsko case, Goraždevac, few crimes in Mogila or in southern Serbia enclaves. Are you investigating those crimes?
Well, I'm sorry to have to repeat from time to time in my answers that that is not any of my knowledge. Indeed, I don't know. I don't know anything about the investigations of the prosecutor. I don't know in which part, for what crimes, whether at all the prosecutor is investigating. I would love to give any answers, however, I don't have an answer to this question.
Okay, to put in another way, can we expect new indictments soon? Has the prosecution already submitted some of them for confirmation?
No. First of all, although this, if the prosecutor would have submitted, this would have been confidential and I wouldn't have, but indeed there is nothing for the moment.
can we expect, that means you don't know. There is one very ongoing issue taking place within Albanian community, more precisely in Albania. Albania recently submitted a resolution to the Council of Europe regarding Mr. Dick Marty's report. They accuse him, nothing new, of making unfounded and unproven claims, primarily in connection to this element of alleged organ trafficking. They called on the members of the Council of Europe to distance themselves from these allegations by Marty himself, but also for the Parliament Assembly of the Council of Europe to request that the new report should be drawn up and resolution, completely new resolution considered, opposite to the one that served as the basis for the specialized chamber. So even if everything requested by Albania were to come to true, how do you understand that? Could such a thing jeopardize the work of the specialized chambers? And within the current statutes, can that be considered as a pressure against the specialized chambers or not?
Well, of course, we know such developments. They're public everywhere. But I'm not a politician, and I don't know what may happen. This will be a pure speculation on my part, and this is not actually my mandate as president of the specialist chambers. No. I'm really focused. I have never been a politician in my professional life. I believe that politicians have to be people educated in political science. So I'm educated in the field of law, and my duty is to deal with the proper administration, judicial administration of the specialist chambers, and also when the Supreme Court of the specialist chambers is seized, to preside over the panel, what I did during the summer recess. So I don't know. Let us see.
Silova, is part of your mandate also to consider security of your team and specialized chambers? When I say security, not necessarily physical, but I'm rather talking of context. Is maybe part of your mandate to be aware of possible threats or possible pressures against the court? Are you informed about these kind of, even if those are political processes?
Well, actually, attacks against the specialist chambers could always be undertaken. And of course, we have a security unit that has to take care of anything that could happen along these lines. For the moment, nothing has been reported to me, although the security is under the authority of the registrar.
Yeah, I'm not talking necessarily of physical security threats, but this kind of political, deeper political context that actually prevents court from, or can be seen as possible pressure against the court.
No, no, pressure will never. Pressure has never happened with us. Pressure will never be accepted. We could never be subject to any pressure, any threats, anything that does not go with the standing of a judge.
How do you understand, and what would be your message to this wider Kosovo Albanian community from the very beginning of the talks on possible establishment of specialized chambers, starting from Dick Marty's report and the prosecutor Clint Williamson's, then establishment. You remember what huge political pressures were to set up these specialized chambers, then what was happening after 2015 when the court established, up until today, tomorrow, I mean, this audience that specialized chambers encounter in Kosovo also the ruling Vetfen dossier currently was also one of the leading, back at that time as opposition part, one of the leading political force that actually protested against the establishment of specialized chambers. So how do you understand these kind of political pressures, and
Well, politics,
what is your message?
Politics is something different from what the specialist chambers have to do. And all of us, judges and everyone working with judges in the registry, we are keeping absolutely distant from politics. We follow because, of course, there were some initiatives about the abrogation of the law to change the initial setting of the court, but we don't engage with anything related to political matters just because our mandate is different. Our mandate, and this is our strength. We have to deal with crimes committed within this period, January 1998, December 2000, crimes, transnational, international crimes committed, as we know, by or against citizens of Kosovo or of the former Yugoslav Republic that are related to the Marti report, so to say. So we are focused on this, and I'm not just trying to find some good words to respond to your question. That is exactly what we do, because our strength is there. We do our job absolutely independently, impartially, fairly, and conscientiously. And that was the oath that we gave before taking the position of a judge, to be independent, impartial, and conscientious in performing our duties. And this informs every single step in what we do. And I feel very comfortable to meet anyone. I don't very well understand the specialist chambers, in particular the judges. Me, I'm a judge first and foremost. We have just to fulfill our mandate. We should not be involved in any political discourse.
The very last question. What is your aim to this visit in Kosovo, and whom did you meet? Who are you going to meet?
Well, actually, this is my first visit to Kosovo. Of course, there was this pandemic of 2 years and more where this was not possible. In-person visit. Otherwise, I used to have via Zoom, for example, the beginning of July. Also, I had a Zoom meeting with the civil society. This is the ultimate, most important purpose of my visit, because what we do, what I also personally do, is transparent, is professional, and I want just to meet people, ordinary people, meaning not necessarily lawyers, because it is important to discuss, to hear questions that could be addressed to me, because there could be some misunderstanding, there could be some shortcomings in our outreach activities. And this is for us to compensate, so that I provide, and my colleagues from the registry, the registrar, the Public Information Communication Unit, that we provide facts that are public, and that we are ready to engage in a discussion, because people have to understand that this is a transparent, genuine judicial institution. After the judgments are rendered, and let me say, justice means convictions and acquittals. So it is not necessarily always convictions or always acquittals. So it depends on the judges. I'm sure that with the judges that have been selected and that are on our roster, and the way they take very, very seriously what they're doing, with the high professionalism, that in some years we are going to meet, and I hope that protests are not going to be there.
I'll keep you for that promise. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you so much, Madame Lazarevich.